Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 best anti-meta civilizations on Arabia in Age of Empires 2. Now last week I made a video talking about the top 5 meta civilizations, which basically just means the civilizations that want to do the most basic and the most optimal strategies and execute them as best as possible to get some nice wins. In this video we're going to be talking about civilizations that can counter the meta and can play a little bit differently, a little bit more unique, maybe a little bit more reactive, but can do just as well against the meta civs if you play them correctly. Now, generally speaking, anti-meta civs are a lot harder to play because you have to be a little bit more smart in your decisions. You have to play with units that are just simply not as well-rounded as the meta civilizations. For example, they're playing mainly with Archer Line, Knight Line, Scout Line. We're going to be playing with a lot of different units with the anti-meta civilizations, but if you like to be creative and you like to play something different than everyone else on the ladder who's just going Franks, Britons, and whatever else, then this could be the nice video for you. And we're going to hop in at number 5, which is personally my favorite anti-meta civ. Alright, at number 5, we've got the Turks. And yes, this is my favorite anti-meta civ, and it's not just because of the gunpowder and, the really strong fast in potential and the good late game. I really like one specific thing about it, and it's very typical of Hera, of me, to like this. It is the light cav with extra armor. Also, the free light cav and Hussar upgrade kind of tie into this. It's basically 2 bonuses in one that helps you shut down all archer play. It is ridiculous. Turks get an extra pierce armor on their scout line starting in feudal, and then they also get light cav upgrade for free and the Hussar upgrade for free, giving them a nice power spike in Castle Age and Imperial Age. In my opinion, the light cav in Castle Age is the absolute best tool the Turks have to shut down pretty much all of the archer civilizations. The extra pierce armor light cav is excellent at dealing with crossbows and it can even destroy cav archers as long as you have enough of the light cav. And on top of that, you guys know with light cav, with the mobility, when the unit gets low HP, you can always run it back and heal it up. It's such a low investment for Turks to get into light cav, and it does so much and gets you so much value, especially against those archer civs. On top of that, against cavalry civs, you have access to the camels. You can easily counter cavalry civs. You also have cav archers that scale really well, so that's definitely an option you can get into. And of course, the gunpowder is great to lean on in Castle Age with the Janissaries, and in Imperial Age with Janissary or hand cannoneer plus bombard cannon. In general, Turks have a lot of good options throughout the game. I think their biggest weakness though is that sometimes they're a little bit slow to get going, and you might suffer some damage in early feudal. So definitely play a little bit slow, a little bit more careful early on, and once you get to Castle Age, you can really do some work with the free light cav and build up into their powerhouse late game. A hard stuff to play, but it's so rewarding when you get those wins with the Turks. Also, it is worth noting that I think a lot of people at lower levels are definitely underestimating the Turk light cav. Let me know in the comments if this is true, if this is something you've tried it out, and if people are just straight up not respecting the extra pierce armor and getting wiped by an army of light cav. It's certainly been my experience when I'm climbing the ladder and using Turks. Moving on to number 4, we've got a civilization that can be played as a meta civilization. It's just not as good as some of the other meta civs, but if you play it in an anti-meta style or something a little bit more unique, you'll see just how strong the civilization can be. And I'm talking about the Romans. Now, there's nothing wrong with going scouts into knights with Romans. In fact, a lot of Roman games, you probably want to do that. But you could play the civilization as an infantry siege based civ, and you can go with infantry straight out the gate with meta arms, plus the blacksmith giving them extra armor. I will put a little disclaimer here. This is not a really good approach in higher level players will not die to Roman men arm rush, but I do think it is really broken anywhere from 800 to 1600 elo. We people will just not be ready to deal with men at arms with extra armor. The Roman armor giving them double the effect in feudal age is absolutely massive. It makes the men at arms take 0 damage to skirms, or like 1 damage to skirms, and only 2 damage to each archer hit. They also take 1 damage from every spearman and villager hit. So if villagers are fighting your men at arms, they need 45 hits, basically making your men at arm unkillable if your opponent is not ready for them. Also, archers only dealing 2 damage is really not that much, considering you're gonna need 23 volleys or 23 hits to kill a men at arm. That is still a massive number, and I think the Roman men at arm rush is extremely strong at most levels of the ladder. So again, not something that's great for pro play, but I do think for most levels out there, for most of you guys, it's definitely worth picking up to gain some elo, and a lot of people won't be expecting it. In Castle Age onwards, you can follow it up with longswords if you want to. You can switch back to knights if your opponent is ready for longswords, and you want to use these scorpions. The scorpions are costing so little for the Romans, and they can get ballistics to affect them as well as some of the Castle Age unique techs that also impact the scorpions. So ballistic scorpions at a low cost, sign me up. That is a good option to go into in Castle Age. Now the Romans do have a pretty big weakness in late game. Sometimes, their late game army is just a little bit too expensive to get into. They're also, lacking bombard cannons. So I can definitely see some weaknesses there. No Hussar upgrade, but definitely still a solid late game and good enough to get you through it. And in my opinion, the Romans are really strong if you like the infantry siege kind of options. Moving on to number 3, we've got a civilization that in my opinion is basically just a top tier civilization in general, and that is the Gujaras. Now the Gujaras are really awkward to play. It goes without saying, their start is completely different, completely unique. The options they want to go for are also very unique, and they don't really have a similarity to any other civ in the game. They are pretty much on their own as far as how they like to play. But I think the Gujaras are an amazing anti-meta civ because they've got excellent options against both cavalry and against archer play, and they also have the right tools to deal with infantry play as well if you run into them. So Gujaras are basically a civilization that can counter anything. However, the one downside to the Gujaras is that you kind of struggle to take initiative with the civilization just because you're lacking knights, and the Sharamsha Rider is not always a unit that you can like lean into. It's not as powerful with its raw stats as the knight, and you don't really have Arbalest either, so the mainline units are kind of failing you a little bit with the Gujaras, and so you're gonna have to rely on your counter units for the majority of the game. That being said though, your counter units are insane. Gujaras have some of the best camos in the game, and the Sharamsha Riders are insane at countering archers. Now, the one disclaimer with the Sharamsha Riders, I like to call them the Shawarma Riders, same thing for me. So the Shawarma Riders are a little bit weak in early castle to crossbows. This sounds really weird, but like I feel like it's hard to mass enough of them and get +2 armor to deal with archers. And sometimes the archer mass of like 15 or 20 can just two-shot the Sharamsha Riders in early castle, which could make things a little tricky. So in early castle, Sharamsha Riders are not excellent, but as you get going to like late stage castle, you get the unique tech to make them cheaper, and you're just spamming them with all upgrades, then they're insane. They shut down archer civs, they destroy them in the late game with elite Shawarma Rider, and it's one of the best units to deal with archer civs in the late game. It's insane. And then of course you have your other options like Hen Cannoneer, Chakram Thrower to deal with infantry. You got your trusty camels to deal with any cavalry civilization out there. And I guess the one weakness is that you don't have pikemen upgrade, you have only spears, but you don't really worry about that because you're going to be leaning mostly on your camels. You also get hussars with decent upgrades, and remember the unique tech making all the food units cheaper is insane. Definitely want to pick that up as soon as you can. And the Gujaras just feel like a really smooth anti-meta civ in general. The one thing with the Gujaras though is that you have to see what your opponent's going for and then go for the counter. Like I said, you usually are not the one taking the initiative. I also really like opening archers with Gurjara and not scouts or infantry. I mean infantry is okay because you have the camo, which is solid, but I don't like the scout rush with Gurjara because I feel like it's awkward to use the scouts with the camo. That's just me though. I recommend archer or infantry opening with the Gurjara and then transition into whatever the game calls for. Moving on into number 2 slots. This is a civilization I think I'm going to surprise a lot of people, and this is mainly based on like a personal opinion and what I've been feeling. And as you guys know, I give you guys my opinion like I use it for tournaments as well, and I actually had this civilization in my hidden cup draft in the finals for Sleary. I didn't get a chance to use it, but it was my Arabia civilization, and that is the Bohemians. I think the Bohemians are fantastic as an anti-meta civilization. The hand cannoneer in Castle Age is nuts. If you can get there, it is insane. It's the best unit in Castle Age basically. It's so accurate, so deadly, and nothing really counters it. Like the best thing that counters is like Skirm with Ballistic, but even that's like 50-50, especially when the Bohemian player gets Mangonels as well. I think Bohemian economy is also insane with a lot of gold and stone. It leads to like forward castles that are just really hard to stop when you include Hussite wagons in the mix. You have monks with full upgrades. You have really strong siege pushes. I really think the Bohemians pop off in Castle Age, and I think they're really hard to play, but they're also really hard to play against because Bohemians have so many tools to counter the normal gameplay. For example, Knights absolutely get destroyed by Hand Cannoneer. Knights also get destroyed by Chemistry Archers. Skirmishers don't really do well against Chemistry Archers or Hand Cannons. So like you're kind of running low on options to counter the strong Bohemian units. Again, the weakness of Bohemians is that they're a little bit slow to get going usually, and some of the strong options take a while to get into, but once you get into them, you're going to be pretty damn solid. I also think Bohemians have a strong late game, but it's hard to play because it's like lacking mobility, but definitely still a powerful late game and one to consider and one to lean on if you are playing that slow push style. Bohemians definitely a really strong civ, but again hard to play. I recommend opening as slow as possible with maybe one range archers and just chilling until Castle Age where you can get into Chemistry Expo or Hand Cannoneer push with an all-in siege behind it, or you can just simply boom and rely on your monks and siege for defense as well, maybe a castle drop for defense or offense. Tons of options. Just play it slow in the early game and you have a lot of success. Before I talk about number 1, I want to quickly go into some honorable mentions. I think number 1 is a little bit obvious. But honorable mentions, I want to talk about the Saracens for a second. The Saracen camels are absolutely killer against all cavalry civilizations. I mean, they're just so hard to deal with. I think the crossbow camel composition for Saracens is also insane. Get a really nice Castle Age spike. The one weakness I think of the Saracens, I think you just kind of fall short against archer civs. So I think that's why I don't want to include it in the top 5. I feel like against archer civs, sometimes it can be pretty difficult. Yeah, you can beat them to Castle Age sometime with the markets, but I feel like sometimes they just outscale you to Arbalest, and if it becomes like a Skirm Arbalest war, Saracens don't really have a good option to break into that. Like, you're not missing anything. You have hand cannoneer, you have bomber cannon, you have siege engineers, you have onagers, you have hussar. You're not missing anything, but you're just missing an eco bonus to get you through to all that. The market helps you early, but then it kind of leaves you stranded a little bit as the game goes on. So nothing wrong with Saracens against archer civs, but it just feels like sometimes they're not doing enough. I also think lacking cavalier kind of hurts them from going into Skirm Cav comp, so it forces you to play range units into archer civs, which should also be problematic, especially if you're up against the top tier archer civs. Moving on now to another honorable mention, I want to talk about the Cumans. It's really hard to rate the Cumans, but I think the 2TC Cuman play is really strong at all levels. Like, even at the highest level, I think 2TC with Cumans is really strong. And of course, the strongest part about the 2TC is that you don't have to do it. You can easily go for a regular game with Cumans. You can even go for the Ram Push and Feudal, which is a really strong off-meta option. And I think the Cumans in general offer a lot with that 2TC style. And I think it's hard to rate it. I didn't want to put it in the top 5, but I think it could be like the best civ in the game if played correctly and if you get away with the 2TC boom. However, it could also be the worst civ in the game. If you go for the 2TC boom and you get punished by the other guy going all in, fast castle, Huang push, then you just die on the spot. It feels pretty bad. But if you mix in the 2TC boom with tower rush or 2TC boom with army, it could be insanely strong as well. Definitely worth messing around, but it's hard to rate it. Definitely worth an honorable mention though. Moving on to number 1, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because I just made a video about this civilization. I made a video about a specific unit of the civilization, and it is of course the Hindustani. The number 1 win rate civilization across all elos on the ladder right now. The Hindustanis are absolutely insane. They have a ton of bonuses that are so strong, and as always, they have all the options they need to counter all types of units. Gulam shuts down all Arbalest Halb civilizations, period. If they switch to champion, switch to hand cannoneer with 9 range, it's over. You're up against the cavalry civ. You have, of course, the Hindustani camel. If they go Paladin Halb comp, which is really good, you have Hindustani camel plus hand cannoneer. You can also mix in your own pikes, which do get decent upgrades. And I think the Hindustani in general are just such an insane civilization, with the cavalry units like scouts and camels breaking buildings faster, leading for all kinds of early aggression to be possible. Crossbow camel is insane with the civ as well. Your late game is solid. You have CA as an option, siege engineers, good monk techs. There's really nothing you're missing. You have a solid eco bonus, which is not great but not bad with the build discounts. I just think Hindustani is like the number 1 anti-meta civ out there right now, and I think the only downside with Hindustani is that, yet again, compared to the Gurjaras, sometimes you struggle to take initiative because you are lacking the Nightline, which is the one obvious weakness of the civ. However, I think the camels from Hindustani could be aggressive enough, and with the extra damage against buildings, could actually take out town centers and other buildings alike if you get enough of them. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown of the top 5 anti-meta civilizations, Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you do. Guys, like the video. No one's liking the videos. Like the video. I'm serious. I'm not playing around over here. Like the video, comment. Let's grow the community out here. All right, love you guys. Take care. See ya. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.